Performance time, come on and run some tests. We're going to find a memory leak. I've got no friends but virtual users. Soak test never end, it's performance time. Hi there and welcome to Performance Time, the show where we look at the basics of performance testing with a fresh pair of eyes. Today, what is a load test script? Well, we talked about how load test tools simulate a conversation between a client and a server. So all a load test script is half of that conversation. It's what is the client going to say? Where's the client going to say to the server? And what are we going to do with the response that comes back from the server? That's what a load test script is. And we use load test tools to develop them. And they often cover one particular business scenario that we want to cover. An actual load test that we run might contain multiple load test scripts. So what's in a load test script? We're going to go into these into more detail in the upcoming episodes, but just to cover the basics, we need to start with some kind of traffic, some kind of requests. That's our starting point. So we often record these using a load testing tool, or sometimes we manually define them, as is often the case with, say, a RESTful API that we want to test. So we have some kind of HTTP requests that we want to send to the server. What do we want to do now? Well, let's say we have to authenticate in our application, and we want to simulate 50 different users, and they all have to have unique username and passwords. So we have to pull these dynamically from some kind of data pool. It could be a CSV file, it could be a database, and we pull a username and a password for each of these users and dynamically send it when we run our test. So that process is called parameterization, or it's really just about data pools. Then we have a situation where once we're logged on, the server returns a session ID. Now we need to take that session ID that comes back from the server and we need to pass it in all subsequent requests. Because if we don't pass it, the server's going to reject us and say that we haven't authenticated or our session is invalid. So that process of extracting a value from a server response and using it in a future request, that's called correlation. And that's another important thing that we build up in our load test scripts. We often also build in some kind of validation, functional validation. Is our test script doing what we expect it to do? So maybe when we log in, we expect to see a welcome screen. And if we don't see the welcome screen, we throw an error to say something's gone wrong, we didn't log in successfully. Or maybe we submit a search and we expect some kind of search results to come back from the server. And if they don't, we throw an error saying something's gone wrong. That's what functional validation is. We can also add in logic to our scripts. So the most common logic I would add is some kind of business loop. So there's a situation where a user will come into an application and they'll log in at the start of a day, then they'll complete multiple business transactions and then log off at the end of the day, maybe at lunchtime. So it's not realistic to log in and log off every single time, so we add in a loop. That's logic. Another kind of logic we might add is some kind of if statement or case statement. If one particular condition occurs, we want to send this request. If some other condition occurs, send another request. That's just logic for a script. And we often extend this even further to have some kind of custom logic. We can write code to do just about anything we want. Maybe we write some code to log some particular test data that we're creating as we go. Or maybe we write some code which pulls out a particular date at a certain period in the past and formats it a certain way. Whatever it is, we add this extra logic into our scripts as required. And depending on your load testing tool, our load test script can contain the load test config as well. So the load test config, I'm talking about the number of threads or virtual users you want to simulate, the think time, the pacing, how are we going to apply our workload, the distribution of scripts that we want to run. Not all tools, but some load testing tools bundle that together in the load test script. But that's kind of beyond the scope of what I wanted to talk about today. So that's what's in a load test script. In the next few episodes, we're going to go into some of these things in more detail. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you next time.